Okay, hi guys. This is some introductory material for you for Unit 5. And if you logged into Unit 5 early Sunday, Monday, you might have seen some confusion. I thought there'd been edits made to this and the ensuing units in the class, but I don't believe they have been made, so I will have to move ahead more quickly. So I have edited the material in Unit 5, took out something that I'm not interested in so much anymore, and added some recent links for materials for you to look at. And what I'm going to do here in about 8 or 10 slides, a little more than that, is very quickly try to give you a sense of what this unit is about and what you should be doing to try to give you a leg up on trying to do this. So this week you need to get some sort of sense of how content analysis is conducted. That's our topic, the method of content analysis. So we have a variety of things we're going to do. First is you've got a little coding exercise, which is easy and quick. You can zip right through it and get a sense of, begin to get a sense of how you draft coding categories and how you code media content. Okay, then we have a single discussion going on. I ask you to post twice, and you just can post twice anytime this week, where we're going to start trying to put together some ideas of things you could code in Twitter tweets, and that'll be the material that we can propose to code. We'll also take other questions from content analysis in that discussion this week, and that's the only discussion we've got. Okay, then you've got an assignment to try to develop your own content categories, and this is linked to the discussion. So what you need to do is get on Twitter, get some Twitter tweets, and look at a small group of tweets, a handful of them, and try to think of something that you could code, something that you could look for in a population of tweets. I can offer you some tweets, I can send you tweets, although that was relevant a couple years ago. Now everybody's on Twitter, or everybody has access to tweets. You can Google tweets and they pop up. But I'm happy to help you find tweets if you're not familiar with how you might find them. Another way for you to try to come up with things to code in Twitter tweets is to look at the articles under the Summarize a Content Analysis assignment. So all these things go together. The discussion is about content categories that you're going to turn in at the end of the week, and those content categories really can be derived to some degree from the articles you might read. And these are scholarly articles by people who are content analyzing tweets in most cases. So all these things are related together, and you also have a basic summary assignment this week. So a couple quick comments on content analysis, and I'm going to move quickly through these slides so you can always pause the video here. This is a wonderful and usable method. A lot of graduate students use content analysis because it lets you develop your own data sets. You can study any sort of media content, and I list a bunch here: book titles, movie scenes, tweets, billboards, newspaper articles, photographs. Just the possibilities are endless. And of course now with social media there's so much more that you can study in postings and updates and things like that. But remember, content analysis only studies content. Sometimes a student will say to me, oh, I'm going to study the effects of violent imagery on kids. Okay, that's very interesting and very difficult to do, but you're talking about two studies there. One is a study of the content using content analysis. The other is then an experiment or a survey or something studying people. Content analysis only studies recorded content. It is a method that is becoming increasingly easier to do, much more sophisticated. Clipping services, you guys might be familiar with environmental monitoring services or services that do social media analytics that look at whether your brand is rising or falling or how often your company or your product is mentioned. And so content analysis really has moved into public relations and strategic communication to a much greater degree than it was a few years ago. Okay. All right, so in creating content categories, we do the same thing that we were doing in a survey. We think in terms of concepts and variables. You think in terms of what sort of concept is represented in the content, and then you come up with categories to identify it, just like you would come up with a survey question to identify something. So imagine that you're interested in bias. Media bias is one thing we often study. You try to find indicators of bias and then count those indicators. You operationalize the concept of media bias with coding categories. And the same challenge we face in writing survey questions is to create valid and reliable measures. That's the same thing here, where you are creating content categories that another observer would look at and say, yes, I really do think you're capturing the content. And that content could be self-promotion, it could be violence, it could be hate speech, it could be bias, it could be all sorts of things. So what we do is we derive our categories, just like we write survey questions, and then we code some content, and then we write those categories, and we go back and forth. We do this labor of research until we arrive at categories that we think are efficient and valid and reliable and workable for us to then go about analyzing some content. So let me show you very quickly some coding sheets from some projects, and I'll show you a couple of my coding sheets. Content analysis is something that really is not difficult at all, but the thing is that for a lot of students, it's just hard at the beginning to sort of get it. What does he mean? What is he getting at? And so I try to show you lots of coding sheets because I think that it clicks for some people. You get a sense, oh, I know how to do this now. So this page and the next page are from a coding sheet from someone who was coding websites for children, and they were particularly interested in the advertising on these websites and whether or not these sites collected personal information. As you can see, the last question here asked for parental permission. So their coders would look at a website and answer these questions. Each of these categories aimed at measuring things that the researcher wanted to try to measure. And this is the second page of their coding sheet, which basically explains some of the content categories. This is the explanation sheet. This helps the coder figure out how to do their coding. Let me show you another example, and I'll go through this one fairly quickly. This coding sheet is actually about 20 or 25 pages long, and it is for coding television shows, hour-long television shows. It's very difficult to do, and it takes a lot of time. You have to train your coders very well. You have to work a lot of time to create a complex coding sheet. But this coding sheet recorded all sorts of things, such as violence, drug use, gender and ethnicity of the characters, how the characters behaved, all kinds of things. And I participated in this project many years ago. I would read through the coding sheet, I would watch an hour of television, then I'd try to code for what I'd seen. And I'd often have to then go back and watch some more of the show in order to answer questions. So here's some of the questions. It begins with just when did the show, was it broadcast, was it rated, what were the parental guidelines. Then it asked for which network it was on, etc., what kind of show it was, a crime, a western, a drama. And it asked for me to determine whether the TV show included violence. Now, violence is a very difficult concept to define and measure. This paragraph here is the efforts of this particular researcher to define violence in the particular way that they were interested, and then I and many other people tried to then see if violence appeared in these TV shows. These questions then have to do with the degree of violence, how intentional it was, etc. So this is a first of two projects I'll show you very quickly. I tried to do code comments posted online after news articles, political news articles. And I tried to determine whether or not these comments were what we call deliberative in nature, meaning they were part of sort of a reasoned conversation. And I created then, using from this concept of deliberation, I created this coding sheet, which goes on for a page or two. And my coders would read each one of the comments and then try to answer each of these questions. My belief was that by combining these questions together, I would measure aspects of deliberation. And some of those aspects were things such as encouraging people to be involved in the conversation, thinking about your response, offering reasons for your position, etc. All right, last example really quickly. In a project that I just completed recently, we looked at the emailed newsletters from the White House. Some of you might get this. It's called the Daily Snapshot. You can sign up for it at the White House website. It's free. Here's an example. Here's another example of these White House newsletters. Here's a third example of them. And what I'm posting in along with this short video is a link to my online coding sheet. And feel free to take a look at it. Feel free to fill it out if you like, as well as links to a couple copies of newsletters. So if you want, you could take a look at a newsletter and you could try to code it. See how it works for you. But you can see some of the things that I try to code for in my coding sheet, which is basically an online survey that I devised to do my coding. I'm also going to post the final report, which we released 6 months or a year ago, and you can take a look at that. So again, I'm trying to give you lots of examples of what coding sheets look like to give you a sense of how it's done. And once you get an idea of what you want to code in Tweets, coming up with some categories is easy. But I think often people sort of are a little unclear at the beginning, and that's what I'm trying to do for you here. Remember, this is an iterative process. Maybe have somebody else try to code a few tweets for you or to read your categories and see if they can make sense of them. Post your categories on the discussion. I'll be on early and often, as I have been the last few weeks, to try to comment on your coding categories and let you know what I think of them. Some possible categories of things you could code for in tweets from particular groups of people, such as self-promotion. If you choose to study the tweets of an athlete or a celebrity, lots of tweets about self-promotion. You could look at the tweets from an organization to see to what degree they offer information or offer links to perhaps pull the audience back to the website. You could code for interaction. Are they asking questions? Are they trying to communicate with their audience? Or smack talk, athletes. This is the sort of comments that athletes might give to insult their opponents or something like that. Okay, so lots and lots of categories. It really is a terrific method. You might use it a little bit when you do your final project in the last course. And as I said, a lot of people now in public relations are using very sophisticated means of content analysis now more than ever. All right, I hope this was of some help to you.